Sorry about that.
What happened to the gavel?
Hear ye, hear ye.
Welcome to the Midcoast Community Council meeting of May 24, 2017. Will the council members please introduce themselves?
Dan Haggerty.
Chris Johnson.
Claire Tuton.
Lisa Ketchum.
Laura Stein.
Dave Olson.
Brandon Kwan.
Thanks. First on our agenda is the Board of Supervisors report. We have Ellie Dahlman.
All right, good evening, Midcoast Community Council and community members. My name is Ellie Dahlman. I'm here on behalf of Supervisor Horsley to provide a brief update. And the first thing that I'll announce is San Mateo County's 13th Annual Disaster Preparedness Day is happening Saturday, June 10th. It starts at 10 a.m., goes till 2 p.m. at the San Mateo County Fair. And if you arrive before 11 a.m., there's free admission to the county fair that day. So I have a handful of flyers to leave here for anybody interested. But yeah, it's kind of fun. They got first aid, police, fire, emergency, medical services, and different demonstrations happening. So that's that. The second item that I have for you this evening is just a brief update on the multimodal or parallel trail, which is the bicycle and pedestrian trail that starts at Murata Road in the south and stretches north to Coronado. And it would be directly east of Highway 1. We received an update from our consultant, BKF, on the status of the schedule. I think at the last meeting I mentioned there was a brief or a minor delay around the kind of a wet area near the willow patch that this trail will have to run through. And so fortunately the survey crews were able to access that area and gather the data that they needed because it dried up enough for them to be able to access. And we expect to have 60% designs by August. So we are moving along. And then if all goes as expected, by April of 2018, we would be ready. The designs would be at 100% and we would be ready to start the bid for construction and construction process. April 2018. So we're moving along. And then the last update I'll share is that some of you may or may not remember the design and permitting phase for that project is partially funded by a TA grant, which we, due to some delays that you probably noticed in the project timeline, we were able to request a grant extension and they approved the request. So we're pretty happy about that because that will allow us enough time to be able to continue, moving forward and use the funds that we were granted to be able to make this trail a reality. So we're excited about moving that forward, and those are the two updates that I have for you this evening. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Any questions for Ellie? Anybody in the audience have questions for Ellie? Does anybody have anything to add?
You're off the hook.
I just had a couple of things that are closely related to the Board of Supervisors report. I didn't want to leave till the end because a lot of times people leave. On May 16th, the board approved the Cypress Roundabout scope of work that's posted on the Connect the Coastside page on our website. DKS, in the staff report, it said DKS is ready to start immediately and would take 3 months for the analysis and the conceptual design for the Cypress Roundabout. And also at the May 16 meeting, the DKS contract was, an extension was approved to the end of 2017 for the Comprehensive Transportation Management Plan. And the new timeline for all this will be available by June 1st. We don't know quite how that's going to set up. And the other item I have is a couple of long-term planning projects that have been going on this past year. Planning, working with County Council, they expect to have ready for public review in mid-June a package of 3 plans: the county subdivision regs update and the Midcoast substandard lot merger program and the Midcoast lot retirement program, which those two are kind of related to the Comprehensive Transportation Management Plan as well. That's it.
That reminds me, I'll just add one more reminder. I may have mentioned it at the last meeting, but on the June 6th board meeting, Board of Supervisors is expected to consider the short-term rental ordinance, or ordinance for vacation rentals that would allow rentals of less than 30 days in residential zones on the coast side. So information will be available as soon as the agenda comes out. And then I also believe there will be another item allocating funds to continue with the Princeton Street End improvements. Currently we've been underway with Broadway. I think we're in the process of obtaining a CDP for a couple benches and the informational sign, and some additional funds are expected to be considered for approval by the board to fund additional street end improvements in Princeton, specifically looking at waterfront beach access at a couple of the street ends there. But we expect to keep the MCC informed of that process and involved as it evolves. I think really at this point the first step that we're taking is allocating funds, and then the next step would be to likely do a site visit, ideally with a representative from the MCC, possibly. I know Lisa was involved with the Broadway, has been involved with the Broadway street end, so I'll be coming back to you with more information on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, got a question?
Janita's Creek that was brought up at the water sampling presentation.
Uh-huh.
The board that came up at the Board of Supervisors meeting, what do we know about that?
It did, and I would defer to, I don't know if anybody would be able to speak on if they were able to see that item. I hope to come back to the next meeting with more information. I know the county expects to release a press release on that, just to share more information on where that's moving.
There's a
Was it a proposal or is it real?
there's an article in the Review today, and basically it was on the agenda, I guess, last time.
It was, yeah.
But it was a bunch of funding that the supervisor was asking for from the state and different places to put together so that Post could purchase the land, but the county's role there is that they are expected to make that a county park and have a ranger there in the house, and that will cost money. And apparently State Parks wasn't able to take that on. So this is the solution that's, to deal with what's been going on down there. And so it looks like that's going to happen.
Yeah, I believe that item, if I'm not I'd be happy to follow up with you to get more information, if I can get your email or phone number, and I'll pass on what happened at the board meeting. But I also will plan to come back to the next MCC meeting with kind of a full report on where we are and where in terms of the county, what steps are happening, and then also at the state level, what's been approved or what's in process there. Because I know from my understanding it's going to be a joint effort, that does require resources from the county, but is also looking to the state for assistance.
Yeah. And the property owner is in favor of this transition.
Okay, thanks. Next item is public comment. Does anybody wish to speak to an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, moving on to consent agenda. We have the minutes for May 10. Have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for May 10th as noted.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
4-0. 7-0. Know where that came from. Okay, first, so I need the projector and the lights off.
Oops, sorry.
Okay.
Well, there it is. So this is, we got a referral for this big wave project modification. We saw something quite similar in January and commented on. Now it's been, now it's deemed a minor amendment. Before it was major, but now it's minor. Anyway, so I wanted to explain this a little bit. because this project has gone on so long, 12 years, and basically the project it changes all the time. Basically, here's the layout that was approved, but this has never seen an architect, and like I say, it's all over the map. Every time it comes up, it's different, and so there's the confusion. But this is what was approved. Basically, on the left, the three buildings are the Wellness Center next to Pillar Ridge. The building in the rear, which is referred to in the conditions of approval as Building 3, don't attach a lot of importance to that number, but it's the building in the rear, and it has 25 residential units, kitchen, dining, common area. It's the core of the Wellness Center, and that is to be built first. And the front two buildings of the Wellness Center have commercial uses on the ground floor, which they will rent out for income. And then the upper floor has 25 more residential units. Then the business park is the 5 buildings next to it, and those are on Lot 2, which you hear a lot about in the conditions. They say that Lot 2, county staff says Lot 2 is already allowed to be built first, which I beg to differ. But you'll hear about Lot 4, which is on the far end, and switching Lot 2 with 4, in other words, letting 4 go first, but whatever. This is Lot 2, this is Lot 4. You may see them call something else later in the presentation, but whatever. And here's the marsh over here. Let's see.
Just for anybody who can't read them, this is building 3, these are the other two. Well, this is lot 4, that's lot 2.
And even though this is the final plan approved in the staff report when the board approved this project, there's more change. In the conditions, you have to read those conditions, because it said, one of the conditions says that the whole thing moves this way and 2 rows of parking get put in down here. In other words, everything gets shifted 30 feet south and parking moves up. This basically gives 65-foot setback from Pillar Ridge instead of a 30-foot setback. So even though this building is supposedly the approved plan, there's a condition in the approval which says, yeah, but it's all going to shift that way. So it's all very complicated. There's many, many conditions, and it's easy to get lost. So what we have before us to comment on is the Board of Supervisors proposed to amend their 15-year development agreement. And the 3 items are to modify the construction phasing, and in the draft letter it says we are opposed to that. And the second item, to allow alternative construction types other than steel or concrete, and we had no comment on that unless somebody wants to add that. And the third one is modify Cypress Highway 1 intersection improvement conditions, which the letter says, the draft letter says that we could support that. Basically, it's to allow the county to take more control of the analysis of the roundabout and everything, but Big Way would still pay their fair share. So I want to take a moment to explain major versus minor modifications. That we've been seeing this lately with once a project is approved at the public hearing, whatever it is, and then it's gone from our view, and the applicant presumably goes and gets their building permit, and something gets built. And if it's minor, if there are minor changes, county staff can make those adjustments in the building permit. And then we get something like that white shiny roof at the trailhead on Magellan. And maybe these projects have been appealed to the Coastal Commission, and years have gone by, and like with the house at the trailhead, where the subject of the appeal wasn't the color of the roof. The roof in the plans as approved was dark, but it was appealed because of wetlands and other things. But by the time this got all done and years went by, and everybody forgot what the design was, and the building permit goes ahead anyway. So it's like, it's an issue that we're facing here, and I don't really know what the answer is, where these things get away from us, and the result isn't a happy one. So
Were official minor changes made, or is it just for?
if it's a
everything?
minor change, this county staff can do it. If it's a major change, it's supposed to come back for public hearing. And in this case, for Big Wave, what we saw, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. The decision as to whether the change is major or minor is made by the Community Development Director, Steve Monowitz, in this case. If it is major modification, then it goes to a public hearing, in this case, the Planning Commission. If it's minor, then the Community Development Director can approve the change.
Well, with the example of the white roof, I was wondering, do we know, was there a minor change approved? Because that doesn't seem,
It was approved, they didn't know the color, they didn't specify the color.
to slip by.
Okay, so last January, we commented on what was then deemed a major modification. This isn't much different this time, but that one would have gone to the Planning Commission. Now it's modified, and now it's called minor, so it does not require a public hearing. However, there is a development agreement, and that requires amendment, and therefore there will be a public hearing at the Board of Supervisors to amend the development agreement. Just to point out that development agreements are rare. In this case, it works to our advantage, otherwise we'd have no say in this at all. So as part of what I don't understand is in this staff report for this, and they keep saying that what the Board of Supervisors approved already allowed Lot 2 to be developed first, and it's nowhere in the conditions that I've read it over and over. It's not there. And here's this graphic that was part of the staff report, both for the Planning Commission when they approved it in January, and for the Board of Supervisors in May. This was in 2015. And this is the sequence of construction that they approved. And in this case, the numbers represent the order of being built. So the Wellness Center is numbers, and the business park is letters. So the Wellness Center, first the back one, then the other two, and then A, which was Lot 2 that you saw earlier, would be the first business park building, then B, then C, then D, and F. The purpose here is this clustering. I'll get more into that later.
Wait, where's F?
E,
Yeah.
D and E,
Sorry.
on the green.
I can't see this very well.
Okay.
Thank you. And then also this color arrangement here, so this means this is the area that gets developed. So when they build building 1 in the beginning, they're supposed to do all this wetland restoration and all this stuff, which they haven't started yet. Okay, so the construction phasing. So the phasing was meant to prioritize the Wellness Center. And the condition of approval, 73E, in no event will any construction for business uses take place prior to construction of the Wellness Center Building 3. And then in the development agreement, that's repeated, as well as this further clarification. The county will not issue any building permits for any standalone business buildings until a building permit for a Wellness Center building has been issued and construction has commenced. I don't know how you could get any more clear than that. They're saying that to delete those two sentences will clarify everything. So basically, to be clear, this will not correct a mistake in the record. This reverses a key condition of project approval, and it should be considered a major modification. Like I say, I have read this thing over and over, and I find nothing in there that says flat out that this building on Lot 2 can be built first. Just to point out that this wording allows the first business park building to to follow right after. All they have to do is have the construction start on the first Wellness Center building, and then they can get the building permit for the first business park building. It's not a huge delay there.
But they have to do the wetland restoration before they do that, right?
No, I don't think they're asking to postpone that. We'll get to that.
Okay.
That doesn't, no, the key piece is that even though there are timeframes for these other mitigations, that's more flexible. You know, that's not a key condition. Key condition is the prioritization of the wellness center, that must be built first.
And I'll point out that the rationale for that was that the business park was not an allowed use. It was approved to support the wellness center. And so there was a very strong desire to make sure that the wellness center was built first.
Well, actually, it is industrial zoning. The reason the wellness center had so much pushback was because the development was so dense, it was so extensive, it would bring in so much traffic and all that. And also, and in that location, hard to access, no road frontage really, and so, okay. The other thing about project phrasing here we have is the protection of undeveloped land. So I pointed out in that graphic that the goal was to cluster the development so that if, to conserve this, there's the picture of the site with all the vegetables. So by moving that first building from next to the wellness center down to the other end, you've just tossed out this goal out the window. And they so they want a cluster development to preserve the prime agricultural land, the wildlife corridor, and open space views. The conditions of approval limit the parking lot to 462 spaces in order to limit traffic impacts. High-intensity business park use, such as office space, could use all the parking before all the buildings were built, in which case, theoretically, no more buildings would be built. Or another scenario might be that there's just nobody comes along to build it, to want any of those other buildings. And so the 15 years would expire. And then where would they be? And so it would be better if the buildings had been clustered, because you have this choice piece of land with the marsh, all this there, and you wouldn't have this awkward outcome. Wetland habitat restoration was the other thing that we particularly objected to, pushing that out. They were supposed to start that right away, but there hasn't been any progress. There's no reason to delay this. Basically, it's not tied to the development. The wetland habitat was destroyed by the pre-development farming. That was the thing they came in to do, to get rid of any indicator plants or anything, to say, oh, this is not a wetland, it's all okay. And all the approvals of the project, they agreed to restore this area and have a generous setback buffer, and there's no reason to stop, to delay this process. There's a tenant farmer on site, he has equipment, labor, it's not rocket science.
Didn't they already bring a lot of soil onto the property?
They brought some into the southern parcel one time. You wouldn't notice the difference. That was an attempt also to get rid of the wetland, but they're not going to develop the southern parcels. It's no longer an issue. So basically, this restoration requires years of selective weed control without further soil disturbance. So it's like there's no point in delay. They could have been 2 years along in this process already. So we oppose that also. I think that's the last slide I have. So, like I say, I wanted to go over this because it's been a long, people are going to make a decision on this amendment. There's a new supervisor even who never heard of this project. And they're the decision makers. And so I just wanted to put this out there. Maybe we could attach this to the letter. It's hard to know when to try and be brief or when to make sure they understand all that went into this. So, any more questions from the council? Chris?
So the clock is
Clarifying
ticking.
question.
Yeah, clarifying. Clock is ticking on the development agreement, right? We're in year 3 of the development agreement.
We're at 2 years.
Or, yeah. So, so they have.
And there's only
yeah.
been one business that in the 12 years since this project has been worked on, and the 2 years since it's been approved, there's only been one business that has come forward interested in the business park, and that's the brewery.
Could we get some light?
And they can ask, I mean, I'm expecting this anytime, they could come back and ask for, can we have an extension to this business agreement? That's something they could ask for.
They could do it, they could ask for anything they like. I forgot to mention here on
That
this
would be a
slide.
major change for sure.
Sure, sure.
Well, I had mentioned that the Harbor Village had a development agreement, I believe it was for 20 years, and it was, I forget whether they ran over or not. Oh, I know, I think they had, remember when there was just one little building out in the middle of the field for years and years, what's now the cafe? That's what they did. They built that building and said, okay, we've started construction, so we're good. And then that's how it got stretched out. But I just wanted to say that, so the, as far as the brewery goes, so the reason that they want, that this is the only business that's expressed interest to go there, the reason why they want to build that first business at the other end is because it's this large brewery, which is not really compatible with the wellness center or whatever, and which points out this whole issue with, here you have this industrially zoned land where they had hoped to put an office park until they ran into the realization of all the parking that would require. But the project allows anything there, from storage to R&D to just industrial, anything to commercial or office space or whatever, and then this wellness center right there. And so, like, obviously they want to develop it, and they're not going to do it on spec. It's going to be on demand, and so they're waiting for someone to come in, and they've only got one, and we have no idea what other businesses may come in, what type of business. So, you know, you could say, well, great, put the brewery down there, and then we'll have this over here. Well, we have no idea what the would be and would come along in the middle and raise another issue, you know.
Is there a reason if they did do something at the brewery, why it couldn't be in a place that's already planned to do early development? I mean, why would they need to put it up way on the other end?
They just
They
don't
just
want it
want to.
next to the wellness center.
Yeah, well, the wellness center isn't there.
But the wellness center has to be built first.
Exactly.
That's why it was approved.
Exactly.
That's the key piece, Chris.
So a slightly different topic on this larger subject. Do we have any evidence, has anybody provided any evidence about why this is a mistake in the record? Transcripts?
No,
Anything?
they just say it's already allowed, and they have not pointed to the wording. And, you know, I've been deeply involved in this project from the beginning and aware of the evolution of the list of conditions over time. And you can always miss something, but I've been over it and over it, and I'm just not finding it.
Yeah, I mean, I know you've been over it. I'm sure that but you've not had anybody say to you, here's the line.
No.
Right, so there's no.
We pointed out to them that, when I say we, I mean Lenny Roberts and I, we pointed out to them that these two, whatever I said in the presentation there, and they just went ahead and sent us the referral. And in the write-up, the chart that's going to be in the staff report for the Board of Supervisors, it just says flat out that this is already allowed. And so the board will accept that, which I find very disturbing. Brandon?
So when would they begin building the wellness center?
Nobody knows.
So they don't even know if they're going to build the business park first or the wellness center.
They have to build the wellness center first,
Mhm.
but
They
nobody's come
want to
forward.
build the business park first.
Yeah, they would prefer to, I don't know, I can't speak for them.
Okay, all right, it's all confusing.
Yeah, I can just tell you what's in the
Mhm.
conditions of approval and what.
Mhm.
Laura?
Well, what kind of strategy do we have? I mean, you have crafted a wonderful letter, because it is very difficult to make sense of it all. But we've watched the Board of Supervisors support this project, which should never have happened, the Planning Commission. And so what kind of steps can we take to educate and inform?
Well, I had an opportunity to talk to Supervisor Horsley, called me about something else, and I brought this up, and he has mentioned actually here that he's taken a lot of grief for this project and seems to be, I mean, I don't know how he'll vote, but I just, when you say, so a lot of this presentation is directed to you, Ellie. And I don't know what we need to do as far as reaching the other supervisors. I mean, we can send a letter and a presentation to all the supervisors. As far as anything beyond that, lobbying, it seems like a lot of effort. I don't know. Do you have any? Well, before we get into, this is clarifying questions.
Oh,
Did I just
sorry.
say, does the, any members of the public wish to comment on this item? Come on up.
Marcia Yates. I have a question. So this whole brewery thing can get just blanket approved by the Board of Supervisors, even though the Wellness Center hasn't been built? Is that what you're saying?
They're asking the board to amend the agreement to allow construction of that building at the south end first, before the Wellness Center.
Okay, so I have another interesting thought. I mean, okay, so the brewery is supposed to be having a beer tasting room, correct?
We don't know the details.
Well, that was
We don't
some,
know the
okay,
details
so
of
that
the
was some
project.
kind of speculation that you
Yeah.
have a brewery, lots of breweries have a beer tasting room, so that's retail, and then they can, of course, then they're thinking, oh, let's attract more retail, let's have guided tours through the facility. And those kinds of things start becoming a tourist destination then. Beer lovers, you know, all this craft beer, so we get beer lovers coming in from all over, not just the Bay Area, but California, the western states. And then, of course, we're looking at the 145 room hotel going down the street by Half Moon Bay, and that also brings in more traffic. And yet we have this little itty bitty street that's going to be serving that whole community. And I don't see that there's much traffic mitigation going on about this, except for maybe the roundabout on Cypress. And that's it. Is that correct?
The unprecedented method of mitigating the traffic for Big Wave was to limit the parking spaces. And so basically what they told us was they're limited to whatever that number was in my presentation.
146 or
464.
462.
And so as each building or each section of the building is approved for certain use, the county parking ordinance says we need so many parking spaces for that use, for the square footage. And so once those spaces are allotted to the different buildings, they can't build anymore. And also, because what we're talking about now is not approving the brewery, we're just talking about the sequence of construction. When the brewery is considered, then their use permit will have to address this issue of if they want tastings, can they have them, and how that would be handled. That would be handled then with the use permit for the brewery, not with this amendment.
Okay, and then after the brewery gets built, then maybe 10 years down the road, the wellness center gets built, maybe, unless we all forget about there's supposed to be a wellness center there, correct? How many parking spaces are they allotting for the wellness center?
Well, I don't have those numbers in my head, but they're not changing with this amendment. They're to remain as approved. They're not proposing to change that.
And so the only method we have to protest this is going to the Board of Supervisors and talking about the amendment on June 6th?
Yeah, the only thing that's up for decision here is the very specific changes of the order of construction. That's all.
That's all. So like say you can build the brewery first and then think about the wellness center?
That's what they're
Or
asking.
is that what we're kind of looking at then?
Well, they're working within this 15-year agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And there are different sections in this condition 73. One, within 1 year, you have to do this. In 2 years, you have to do this. Well, let's get to the part, within 5 years, you have to build the first wellness center building. And then you can build the first business park building. But what they're asking to switch that, and in which case, if they did allow them to switch that, they would build the business park building, and would still have the 5 years to build the first wellness center building, which would be, we're at year 2, so 3 more years from now, they would have 3 more years to build the first wellness center building.
And then do they have to start the, what is the wetland restoration before they can build the brewery?
The wetland restoration timeline isn't tied to when the buildings are built. It's just a time limit. It says within 1 year, they're supposed to start it, and then within, whatever it is, 3 years, they're supposed to finish. And they want to push that out by another year is all, and we're just saying, we don't agree with that. There's no reason to push that out.
Even if they did push it out by another year, they're still in arrears. They should have,
Yeah,
they've had
but
2 years to start it.
Yeah, but that's not tied to any particular building being constructed.
Okay, and this timeline change doesn't have to go, has nothing to do with the coastal commission, because it doesn't really change the plan, it just changed the timeline.
Well, the coastal commission would have some say, and I only have the second hand, that they ran it by Janine Montague, the coastal commission staff who was involved in this, and she said she was neutral on it. And I have no details, I have not spoken with her directly. And whether she was misinformed on this, this bit of contention we have here, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. So I think we all should go to June 6th and raise our voices, because only the Board of Supervisors, if they don't hear from us, they will think it's all okay with us, that they can change the timeline, they can change anything within the approval. They can play well, not Monopoly, but whatever they're playing, and change everything around. And I think the only reason Big Wave got approved was, I mean, everybody said, wellness center. And now it's coming to kind of be, who's got the money. It's not who cares about the wellness center anymore. And that's the whole premise was, we're building the wellness center. And you guys who don't agree with us, don't like disabled children, don't like disabled adults, whatever. And now they're saying, no, we don't like them either, because we need the money to build the business center. And I just think that's wrong. And we really need to just get up there and tell them that that's wrong. Anyway, my 2 cents, and thank you very much for the presentation.
Of course.
You can send email to the Board of Supervisors about this prior to the meeting as well.
Anybody else in the public wish to speak on this item? Gail?
I just have one question. They're asking right now for one change, and just another building, one
It's
building?
a package. It's a package of changes.
So that's a big difference between, it's just one addition, one building being done first.
Yeah, the other
But is
thing
it
as
going to be
far
more
as,
than one building? Like, say, the brewery here and this here and that there? And
The
the
other
wellness
change-
center is built after 10 of them are built?
there are 10, but.
I know, but I'm being
The
facetious.
other change related to the order of development is that it used to, currently, what did I say? It's on the slide. The wellness center has to be finished. The last 2 buildings in the business park can't be built until the wellness center is finished. And they're asking that to be changed to, what is that, I've got it backwards, to 3 to 2, sorry. Which slide is it on?
The current request, the current requirement was start the wellness center, building 3, and then they can get the building permits for building 2.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, the other, also proposed is 3 business park buildings instead of 2 to be built before completion of the wellness center.
Three buildings, okay.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference,
So
a
the
big
last
difference.
3, no, okay, let me go back to the thing. Okay, so, currently, you see C, D, E in gray.
Mhm.
Those can't be built until the wellness center is finished. What they're asking for is that that would be reduced to 2 buildings. So it moves the third to last business park building up sooner. It favors the business park once again.
Okay.
Okay, back to the council. Dan?
So what statement has been made by the developmentally challenged community regarding this?
This is just an early referral we got from the planner. Basically, when we saw this in January, which was quite similar, we commented on, there was a letter that came from the Half Moon Bay Chamber of Commerce in support of the changes, which is consistent with their involvement. We didn't get any quotes from the developer at that time.
Can I rephrase what you said, maybe? Or you can do it yourself.
Well, yeah, so no statement has been made by the developmentally challenged community? Do they even know that this, you know?
Oh, the community.
Yes.
I don't know.
The people that were at all of our meetings for years and years haranguing us that we didn't care about them.
Yeah, those people.
We heard from that
Yeah.
community.
Presumably, the big wave partners are representing that community, at least that's been the position all along.
But they're having to.
I remember some
longer to-
testimony from a lot of those kids
Well, they're gonna.
demanding that this
But they're-
happens.
They're saying that the
Immediately.
reason that they have to build the business building first is so they can get money to build a wellness center, which they're saying that now. Well, all through this 12-year process or 10-year process or whatever, they said, you know, this is a model that's going to change the way things are done. We're going to have private financing, we're going to do this, and the business park was meant to subsidize the ongoing costs of the wellness center. It was never said that the business park buildings had to be built in order for the developer to have the money to build a wellness center. That was never said until now.
Right.
What is the story with Mid-Penn? They were going to.
They backed out. They're not
They were going to
following.
do financing and now they're not going to. Do you know what the
They-
proposals were?
They had
there?
an MOU, and the MOU just failed.
They backed out beginning of the year.
So what's providing the capital for their project now? Like,
They don't have any capital.
so that's why they want to build the business park first, just to generate enough income to build the wellness center and all that stuff. Is that correct?
This goes beyond my role
Oh.
to assess what their motivation and their finances
All right.
are. I'm just here to interpret this referral and the
Yeah.
conditions of approval.
My apologies, but money speaks for everything
Okay,
nowadays.
we can make all the assumptions we want, but
But we
basically,
don't have an answer,
Got
they
it.
have not
Yeah.
made official statements.
Yeah. I see.
I would think this is time to talk about what Laura said about what kind of leverage do we have? What's the best way to present what we think? This is so confusing for us. I can imagine how confusing it would be for somebody on the Board of Supervisors who hasn't been following it. I think this is a good presentation. I think the letter is great, but I think we almost need something else to tie it all together. I'm not sure what, but something that really explains what's happened over the years.
well, then you run into the problem of who's going to read that. I mean, already what we have a page-and-a-half letter and a slide presentation, and there's going to be the county staff report, and I would assume that they will, and perhaps Big Wave will also have a presentation, and they're going to have a lot of other things on their agenda as well. So, you know, what more will they read? I don't know. Chris?
With regard to what our strategy can be, there's no strategy. This is a done deal. This thing is already done. This language in the staff report about, and corrects this mistake in the record. That's what the new supervisor is going to read, and corrects no reference to what that mistake is, what the language is that indicates it's a mistake. that is a poison pill right there. That language right there will guarantee this gets approved, this modification of the phasing. And it really, I'm personally offended by this line in this staff report with no reference, no citation of any kind, as if it's just oh yeah, we rushed this thing through, and oh, by the way, we made a minor mistake. I'm not even a full-term veteran of this campaign, as you are, and other people that were here, have been here for the whole 12 years. But I've sat through double-digit meetings on this. There's no mistake in the record. This didn't get overlooked. This was hashed out over years, and to have it put in the county staff report, mistake in the record, this cake is baked. There's nothing that can be done. This thing is going to get rubber stamped faster than a Trump Supreme Court nomination. And so there's nothing that can be done. I mean, we've already, this letter is fantastic. It boils it down to the most important things, and the only edit I would make it to it would be to redline the whole thing and just say, hell no, exclamation point. How many times do we have to have this shoved in our face? As people have pointed out, the wellness center, the wellness center, the wellness center. You hate developmentally disabled people, the wellness center. Okay, great, wellness center. Now we want to have the furthest south building start first. So there's no mistake in the record. It wasn't an oversight. This language has been put in there to make sure that this thing gets approved, or to help it get, I mean, not to make sure, to help it get approved. And I am personally offended by that particular phrase being inserted in the county staff report with no citation whatsoever.
Well, you bring up a good point. So how do we ask for that and have that documented?
I would think that,
Point this out to us.
The whole thing of like, it's a major modification, now it's a minor modification, now it can be, decided by the community development, the whole thing, I mean, there's a pattern of, at best, poor planning on the part of the applicant, and at worst, intentionally disingenuous deal-making with the intent of exactly what's happening right now. And I cite the lack of any work being done on the wetlands mitigation as an example of that. No intent to do that. I'll be surprised if it ever gets done. So we have a pattern of incorrectness or disingenuousness, and yet approve. I'm sorry to be so negative and cynical, but when I see that phrase in this thing's happening.
I think that, for me as well, there's two parts to this. One is, if they want to change the order of construction, that's one thing. They're the decision makers. But it needs to be explained accurately that they are changing it, not saying that it's already allowed. And like on this side here, that it doesn't correct a mistake. It reverses a key condition of project approval, and it should be processed as a major modification.
Yep.
I would think that's the bottom line, that we deserve that much.
Yeah, I think that the letter and the presentation make that point pretty clearly. And I'm sure most people remember this was heading towards an appeal from a Board of Supervisors division to the Coastal Conservation, CCC. But there was a negotiation on what could be built and how and when. And that was a outside the county negotiation, good faith negotiation, and that's where some of these conditions came from.
Actually, that process happened when the Planning Commission decision was appealed to the Board of Supervisors, and Supervisor Horsley convened a working group where the developer and the appellants worked out some of these things, and concessions were made on both sides.
Right.
And that was incorporated into the final conditions of approval. And so there was that 3 or 4 month period there where the applicant could have said, well, we need these other things, or, but it didn't come up.
Yeah. And my point was, Don was part of that process.
Yeah.
So he'll be at the Board of Supervisors meeting.
So I guess this is part of what I was saying,
Yeah.
that I went into this in some depth, because I hope you can carry the gist of this conversation to Don. And I don't know if we need to go to the hearing or
Yeah.
what, but,
Mhm.
it is important, even for just the principle of this, the way this has been handled.
Yeah, I think the letter and the presentation convey as much or more than going and speaking in person. And it's better to get it to the board ahead of the meeting so they have time to think about it. So I'm in favor of the letter and sending the letter with presentation, keeping it relatively short as it is.
So maybe what I should do is change this into, instead of just have this to be to Camille, just send this to the Board of
Oh,
Supervisors.
I would absolutely send this to the Board of
Just go the full
Supervisors.
step,
Yes.
attach the whole thing, send it to the full board, assuming they're gonna hear this on June 6th,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
be done with it.
yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
I think the points you made, Chris, would be, I would like to see them made to the Board of Supervisors, if somebody's willing to go, unless you think there's some reason why we shouldn't.
You think
I'm
it's
gonna
not covered in the letter?
It is, but you have done it in a, diplomatic, professional way. I want to be,
I think it's a good idea for people to go. Anybody who wants to fight traffic and go over there for a morning meeting, it will only help.
Right, but if somebody wants to go as a representative of the council,
As long
then
as you
you
stick
need
to
to
the
speak
letter.
to what the council has said.
Right, you can speak that you
Otherwise, you
support
can
the
speak
letter.
as an individual.
Right.
I think that would be a good idea. Someone could make it,
Or more than one.
or more
Whoever
than one.
wants to go. Okay, so.
definitely going.
Thank you. So, I hope you will support our letter. So do I have a motion
Aye.
for this letter?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the letter as written.
Amendment?
With the minor amendment that it goes to the Board of Supervisors.
Oh, that's easy, I do that all.
Yeah.
She's a
I
distribution.
just
all
want to
the
be
time.
clear.
The lady in control.
I'm always adding people to the distribution. Okay.
I will second that motion with the proposed amendment.
All in favor?
Aye.
7-0, not 4-0.
Might I just add, I can't imagine the time involved in making sense out of all of this and how much you had to read and reread things, so I thank you.
Yes, to distill it down to a edible bite is genius. Thank you, Lisa.
I'm
Thank you,
glad
Lisa.
it was perceived that way.
Well, again, you're talking to a group of people that has been, sat through many meetings, and so, yes, it makes sense to us. I don't know if it can make sense to anybody, and again, is that part of the strategy?
Yeah. We had like pajama parties at the
Yeah, I have like
Coastside Design Review.
several days of my life I went back from big work.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the New Granada Fire Station 41 landscape plan. So I wrote a short letter on this, and I just want to show you some pictures. As to, the letter's pretty straightforward, but I just want to go over this because landscaping is important. And this slips through the cracks. So this picture is from this is what do you call these, rendering of what it's going to look like from Avenue Alhambra. And so you see these trees put there along a row. Well, those are young trees, and you know what that's going to look like when they mature, don't you? It's going to look like a wall of trees. So here's the landscape plan, and can you see, okay. So as a landscaper, I look at this, and over here it says what these trees are, and this group over here, and this line of trees, and this group over here contain 3 kinds of evergreens, one of them being Monterey cypress. And you're familiar with that. So these are grouped close enough and in a row close enough that these will form a solid wall of cypress trees. And basically, all that needs to be screened here is the parking. The
Which is
building-
lower than Alhambra, so you don't
Right.
even need to have very
Right.
high ground cover at all.
It's like hardly anything there at all.
Yeah.
And over here, there's just willows over here. Nobody can see. All this will do is block the view for the people in this apartment building. And, okay, so I commented as individual on the EIR about this plan and the view impacts. And their response was, oh, this doesn't really fit with an EIR comment, it's all good, we're supposed to screen this from the highway and whatever. And then when Gary Burke came and gave a presentation, and I mentioned it, and he said, oh, I agree. But the thing is, if you don't get this in a condition in the approval, it's not going to happen. You've got nothing to hang it on. And then you need to hold them to it. And that's why I wanted to stress this now, because we're seeing this all the time where these fall through the cracks. So I took pictures of the story pole. This one is enhanced, you can see. So this part is the tallest building. So you're going to have some view blocking, but there was trees there anyway. It's not all that bad. Oh, you can't see this very well, but this is a shorter building. So that building comes along here. So it's not even blocking the ocean view.
I'm sorry, Lisa, I believe in the EIR it said, like, in response to your comment, it'll be appropriate vegetation to screen from Highway 1. The Highway 1 was the perspective that was mentioned in one of the responses to your comment. And from that lower picture right there, we can see the willows already screened from Highway 1.
They quoted an LCP policy that required them to do that, but there's the other policy, which I have here that I quote in the letter. LCP, and as you go along, I know you can't just read the LCP and remember it all, but as these things come up and you see, well, that was a useful policy, keep that in mind, that the under visual resources policy 8.12.b, locate and design new development and landscaping. Landscaping is considered development, so that ocean views are not blocked from public viewing points such as Avenue Alhambra. So what we're requesting is that in the conditions of approval, they require, I didn't mention this yet, native plants in the landscape. I thought, well, heck, why not? This is our fire station. And it's right next to the riparian area and all that. So require native plants, and also that the landscaping trees and shrubs be selected and located such that they're at their natural mature height. They do not block public ocean views from Avenue Alhambra. And this is the example of what not to do at the beach house, where you have cypress trees along the parking lot, and then so now as those trees have matured, you can see the cars. They don't block the view of the cars, they just block everything else. And they're too close together, so you don't get that natural, beautiful form happening either. Now, by the way, over on this side, you may not realize, but these trees have recently been topped. And I've been in, just an aside, I've been in contact with someone who owns a condo there. We're going to talk to the manager about this situation and see if we can't get some pruning or something done. It had never occurred to me that there were local people that own some of these condos that might help out. Anyway, so I think that's all I had on the letter. I just wanted to emphasize that when I'm no longer here, maybe somebody else can take up this struggle about the landscaping. It's important when projects are approved. Okay.
Can I make a motion?
Anybody have any questions, comments on this? Anybody in the public? Okay, somebody turn on the light. Marcia?
Marcia does.
How do you,
Marcia, can you come up to the
talk
microphone?
to these people about the landscape design?
Marcia.
For the fire station? Do you write a letter to the planning commission?
No, we're going to, we're writing to the planner here, and we're asking him to put in the conditions of approval those items.
I see. Okay, thank you.
That's the only way to make sure it really happens. Well, maybe it won't even happen then, but at least that's your best shot at it. Any questions? Okay, a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the letter as written.
Second.
All in favor? 7-0, thank you. Council activity, anybody? Nobody?
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm trying to remember what we went to. What did we go to, Dan?
The Capistrano Outfall meeting,
Capistrano what?
the Capistrano Outfall Study meeting
Uh-huh.
over at the, or is that not what you want, so.
You mean you didn't come prepared with your report?
We went to the El Granada thing. I mean, the Quarry Park.
Quarry Park, yeah. All right, well, I'll mention the Capistrano Outfall then. The Half Moon Bay Yacht Club Foundation, not the yacht club itself, is working with the RCD and the Harbor District to try and raise some funds to figure out that the Capistrano Beach right across from the brewery is the most polluted beach in San Mateo County and several other counties. And nobody's ever been able to figure out why. So they're trying to raise money to do some studies to figure out why that is the most polluted alcohol around.
There was also the pre-app hearing for the hotel in Montera, which I guess Lisa, Dave, and I were at.
I got something written up, I had posted
Okay.
on there were about 40 people, 40 Midcoast residents attending the workshop. Also in attendance was a representative of the property owner, which is AHK International Limited, Ridgegate Apartments. They're not local. The applicant, local architect Ed Love, described the project as a boutique hotel, meaning upscale and pricey. Although plans show 7 parking spaces on site, he acknowledged that the 13-unit hotel would require 13 guest spaces and 7 for staff, and he proposed leasing 13 additional spaces off-site in the neighborhood with valet parking. That was not well received. Do you guys have anything to add?
I think that's a very good summary.
I think you sent me a copy of the comments that you made at the meeting, and I wanted to tell you that in addition to being spot on, I felt they were very poetic. There was a lyricism to them that was very nice. Beyond what you're usually very, matter of fact, but this was
a personal comment,
yeah,
so I let loose.
I was very impressed with the.
Basically, it summed
with your
up that
lyrics.
this building didn't want to have any part of the community, and I sensed that the feeling was likewise, and there was a round of applause, I think. So, yeah, because the building is just these blank walls with all the windows on the one side towards the beach. Anyway.
There was a lot of commentary by the community members about wishing that these projects could be considered as a whole rather than piece by piece. That point was made over and over, and it didn't seem to register with the county people who were there.
Well, they will have to do traffic studies, and they will have to consider cumulative effects. And basically, since the zoning, as we know, is inadequate, and there's no opportunity to fix that in time, we will have to work all those other angles and make sure that's all addressed. It's the only way we can have an effect on it. Other things?
You want to do Quarry Park?
You can.
So the first Quarry Park master plan.
Can I just add one thing to the?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make the comment that, after the meeting, one of the community members that sounded like a proponent for the development. Afterward, he said, the traffic is already bad, so it doesn't matter anymore. And essentially, it just really ticked me off, and I let him know it. Yeah, it's bad, and it's going to get a lot worse, and every one of these developments will add to it. There's just no way around it. It's just going to get really bad, and then they're going to try to come up with some little adjustments that'll probably make it worse. So there's just no way around, not accepting, yeah. So I'll be right there with all the traffic, protesting of the development.
Okay, just keep in mind, this is just reporting on meetings and not strategizing for how.
Right.
Okay.
So the first of 3 Quarry Park master plan meetings was held. Unfortunately, lower attendance than those working on the master plan would like, but at least there was pretty good feedback. There were quite a few comments on what people did and didn't want to see happen.
How many people were there?
I'm going to say
50?
30, 40 max. And that's everybody, a good chunk of whom were county staff and facilitators.
Anything else?
But it is only the first of 3, there's 2 more.
Yeah. I had a couple things to add. The tree regulations update that the county's working on, I'm on the steering committee. The steering committee has been meeting every other month since September, and the final meeting is in July, after which we can expect public review of a draft document. They're doing a comprehensive job. And then one more thing to report, the new house at the Trailhead on Magellan, which I brought up earlier, with the white reflective roof. The roof was dark color in the Board of Supervisors and Coastal Commission approved plan. Coastal Commission staff says, I've heard back now, they say they didn't have color samples and approved the building plan roof as galvalume non-reflective, with no color specified. The permittee, so they've been back and forth now with the permittee, and they cannot confirm non-reflective coating, but the manufacturer assures that the material will dull naturally in 1 to 2 years. And that, so Janine at the Coastal Commission, she said that seemed reasonable to let that run out, and then if it was still reflective, they'd make them do something else, but that seems to be all that's gonna happen. Other changes in the plans were the corrugated metal fence instead of a wood fence. Apparently that was allowed by the county, so I can follow up with that to see how that decision was made. And also, so basically, like I say, just reporting correspondence here. My point is, if you have any questions, that's okay, but if we want to discuss the process of staff changes and plans and clarify any, if we want to discuss this topic further, we should have it on the agenda. Does anybody think we should do that?
You mean when a project gets approved? Okay.
Well, just to have a conversation about this more fully than we can have here under council activity.
This specific project.
This one and other related ones, I guess. We've seen this, from the Beach House Hotel, which was supposed to have all that open view area, and various projects when they come up. Well, how did that happen? And also the other aspect, there's been a project I've been working on. There's a chain link fence that was put on the beach at Seal Cove. And I've been able to, just by working through code compliance and the planner, to get that removed. And today it came through their proposed replacement, and they were still going to leave, and Camille, the planner, sent me to review. Instead of just commenting herself and giving them the go-ahead, she sent it to me to look at. And I said, no, they need to take out this last bit of fence. And she will follow through on that. So basically, it's just a matter of opening up. Have I run off what I said I shouldn't do here?
I think you're still very much on reporting correspondence.
Okay, I am, yes, with Camille. So this was similar, and that was the exchange I had with Camille today. So basically, if you can just get the planners to, check back in if something like this happens, then that can help, because we're the local people that know the local situation, and if they're open to that. So, yeah, we should explore methods.
Then I have just a question on your report on the Magellan House, not a discussion, but just a question on your report on them. So, because you noted a couple other things that maybe have changed from the final approved project to what is being built now. Has anybody gone over the entire project with a fine-tooth comb and seen if there's anything else that changed besides the big noticeable thing like the shiny roof? Because as I've gone by that house a few times, I've noted to myself a couple of things like, I'm surprised that got through design review because of the, no window on one entire wall and
And that was my
unarticulated
question,
walls.
yeah.
It seems odd that that would get approved.
So here's the problem of a project that took a long time to get approved, and there's no record of what design review did. I mean, we don't have records of design review from last month, much less however many years ago that was. And it was approved with some corrugated metal, and I don't
Yes,
know what
the
color,
corrugated metal
but
roof.
but it was this dark color on the roof, and I wondered about the windows that are on the side where the garage door was. Apparently, those are garage door. That's the garage doors. Actually, looks like. Anyway, the main thing is that there's a garage there, and so That leaves, to my mind, just, I mean, it's not my neighborhood, but the fence seems a bit much. And I will follow up with the, it's basically because this thing went through so much, and then the Coastal Commission was involved in the approval. But when the Coastal Commission settled it, they just agreed to keep the same design that had been approved by the Board of Supervisors. So how did this happen? And I don't know, I'll get back to Dave Holbrook about that.
Aren't there extra standards it needs to meet because of being in the view corridor from Highway 1?
Exactly.
So I mean, it's like a,
That's why the coastal commission was involved.
Well, they were more
yeah, but there
involved.
should be higher standards.
Exactly, that was my point in my email to Dave Holbrook that started this off. How did this happen? I mean, I wasn't accusing, I just said, we would just like to know how we got from there to here. And so, I guess I'm still in the midst of finding out how that happened. As to your question, has anybody gone over and looked at all of this? That's a whole project that I'm not really interested in undertaking. Maybe you'd be interested as to what the design review folder said and how that all works.
I would not personally be interested, but it seems to me at the county planner level, when we're seeing changes from the approved plan, multiple changes pointed out, who, maybe this is the topic you were saying we need to have a larger discussion. When obvious differences between what was approved are now being built, whose bailiwick is that? Who follows up on that? Is that code compliance? Is that planning department?
Not
No,
code compliance.
Because the plans were approved, so
Right,
it's
so
not.
it's the planning department?
So basically-
Presumably, the plans were approved.
Basically, plans are approved, and then the people come in to get a building permit. And at that point, the planner who was on the project confers with the building department people, and they decide if the building plans match. Somewhere a decision is made, whether it's close enough or whatever. We don't know. This happens at the office, and it happens all the time over all these houses
So we
and
are
stuff.
drifting off from correspondence and I think it's clear we do have an agenda item.
There's something there, yeah.
Well, I have something else I want to say.
I thought
No.
it gave you all a chance.
No, I didn't quite finish. So what is now tentatively called, but not finally called, the Ohlone Portola Heritage Trail, in commemoration of the expedition and all the native peoples that were living on this section of the coast, is getting closer to a tentative route, and the decision was made to include beyond Sweetie Ridge and down to El Palo Alto at the creek crossing in Palo Alto. So that route is being defined as well. So hopefully those will be far enough along that in 3 to 4 months, I'll be able to send that out to people who want it.
Oh, good.
But right now, it's, the Post has been donating their GIS expertise, and they did a lot of work on analyzing the land ownership on the proposed routes. So that helps us determine what's feasible and what's not.
Anybody else? Nick snack, no take back. Okay. Future agendas, we have got the referral for Valmar Bluff Whorehouse thing, so maybe next meeting, we'll see. We just want to make sure if everybody is okay with it, or if we need to ask for certain conditions still, or what.
Does that have the conservation easement and stewardship plan?
Yeah, the details aren't there, though, as to how that would legally be enforced, and also the trail retreat that I talked about with Sarah when she was here. That needs to be, we need to ask, like we did with the letter today, ask for certain conditions, I think. Anything else anybody wants to put on a future agenda? Shall we adjourn? Okay, we are adjourned, thank you.
Thank you.
8:15.
That's amazing.